AI is about to put a lot of programmers out of work. Sam Altman just came out and revealed that they have an internal model that currently is 50th in the world in programming. That means it's a top 50 programmer of all the programmers in the entire world. He also thinks that by the end of 2025, programmers are going to be essentially useless. Let's jump into what this means for the programming career, if you are a programmer, how you should pivot, and the future of programming as a whole. First, some background. I've been doing programming. I'm not a programmer myself. I do write a little code here and there. I've been working as a software developer for companies where I basically manage teams of programmers for a little over 10 years now, about 11 years. What I'm seeing in the AI world in terms of coding has changed so drastically over the last year and a half that, in my personal opinion, about 90% of coders are going to have to pivot, right? I'm not saying that they're going to be out of work completely, but they're going to have to pivot. If you're writing basic front-end code, you're not going to have that exact career of writing front-end code for very long, in my humble opinion. And I'm going to go through some reasons why I think that's the case. I wrote a thread on this on X today. Go ahead and follow me there if you haven't already. It's at Mark Gadala. I put a ton of cool stuff out there on X before I have time to make these videos. So if you want to get this information first, definitely follow me there. But the first thing I want to show you here is basically Sam Altman talking about how the beginning of ChatGPT, they were 1/1,000,000th in the world in coding. Now they're ranked 50th. Okay, so let's go through this video real quick and let's watch this together.
The progress over the recent scale is quite amazing. Our very first reasoning model was like a top 1/1,000,000th competitive programmer in the world. People thought that was very impressive. It's like, wow, an AI, it's, in the millionth best people that do this. That's pretty good. We then had a model that got to like top 10,000. O3, which we talked about publicly in December, is the 175th best competitive programmer in the world. I think our internal benchmark is now around 50, and maybe we'll hit number 1 by the end of this year.
So essentially what he's saying is that the original ChatGPT was the 1/1,000,000th most competitive programmer in the world. They got up to the 10,000th. O3, which is their model they're about to release very soon in the next coming weeks. They have the mini version right now, but that's basically the 175th best programmer in the world. So we're already talking top 200 programmer in the world. And their internal model, which they have not released yet, are not planning on releasing anytime too soon here, he's claiming is 50th in the world, and he believes we'll get to number 1. That's basically what he goes on to talk about this in this video as well. So this is a really, really big deal, right? So we've seen the progression happen very, very quickly. And I've made a ton of videos on this channel using Claude, using Cursor, using Bolt, using Lovable. There's tons of these apps out there that basically allow you to use these LLMs to write code and do it in a really easy way. We've seen this progression happen very, very fast. And I personally think that this is going to envelop everything very soon. If you work within a certain framework, it's going to learn that framework, AI, and it's going to do a better job of writing it than most front-end coders. Now, we're not there yet, right? We're not there. I think that when I use AI to code, I personally don't think that it's taking away any jobs right now. Maybe some really basic, like junior level stuff, but I don't think it's taking away like senior level programming jobs right now. I still work with a ton of programmers. They work every single day on my projects, and I don't think that that's going to go away within the next, let's say, 3 to 6 months. But I personally think that over the next few years, it will be changing very, very fast. Even if you're using overseas developers, like people in India, whatever, that I think is still going to be less cost effective than using AI if you're using it correctly. And the way I think this is going to work is that you're going to have basically a high level programmer who's going to manage that project, right? And help, use AI to do some tasks, and then maybe have some junior level people just to clean some stuff up. And then he comes in and reviews everything. That's kind of my guess for the future. But what's really crazy here is just how good this O3 model is. So this just came out today in a paper that they released. So they're using something called Code Forces, and Code Forces was like a competitive scale and test to see how competitive these models are. So their latest model, O3, so O1 you can see was 89%, O1 was 98%, which is a really big deal. O3 is 99.8%. And for context, what that means is that it's an actual grandmaster coder right now. The last model, O1, basically was in the master tier, didn't quite break international master. We now have an AI model that is a grandmaster software developer. So when I was growing up many years ago, back when I was in high school and I was writing, Q basic code, the idea that AI would write the code for you was just, it's like, it still blows my mind today. And when I use some of these tools, it actually blows my mind today that they can do this work. And just to think how quickly this has happened is really almost tough for me to grasp, to be honest. And since I do run an agency, I'm thinking about my pivots. I'm thinking about my next steps. What am I going to do to make my agency AI forward, right? What am I going to do to make sure that I can AI proof my agency? So This has been on my mind a lot lately. I'm sure if you work in the industry, if you have a coding job, this has been on your mind too. We're going to get through this. Everyone's going to pivot. We're going to have to. But this is sort of like an industrial revolution level moment, especially for programming, I think. One interesting thing, I feel like a lot of people were caught off guard by this. The founder of Stable Fusion here, he actually came out and said 2 years ago that he thinks that there's going to be no programmers left in 5 years. So we're 3 years away from his target. So let's just watch this together as well.
There are no programmers in 5 years.
Wow.
I think we always have to look at the unchanging versus the inevitable. So an inevitable is 41% of all code on GitHub right now is AI generated. ChatGPT can pass a GLUE level 3 programmer exam and it will run pretty much on a MacBook or a phone.
And that's this year?
This year, right now.
Yeah. So those of you with kids who you are having Python lessons and so forth, maybe it's instead helping them to understand how to ask great questions or give great directions or prompts.
There are no programmers in 5 years.
Was very forward thinking in saying this. And a lot of people said he was crazy when this came out. I remember I made a post on this and a lot of people were pushing back really hard. This was a few years ago. A lot of people were pushing back on me on X saying, hey, this is crazy. It's impossible. There's no way we're going to get there. When you look at this and you see how far we've come, it's hard to argue, right? He's saying there's going to be no programmers left. I don't necessarily think that. Not everyone does. The CEO of AWS also came out and basically said most developers could stop coding as soon as AI takes over. So he thinks within 2 years, there will be no more programmers. And this was in 2024. So basically by the end of next year, there's going to be no programmers left. Another guy like on X here, Sahil, he's coming out and he's basically making a less doomsday prediction. He's saying that it's going to shrink by about 67%. So he thinks that there's going to be, roughly 70% less coding jobs over the next 3 years. And basically, you're going to have a smaller team that's going to be able to do more with AI. I'm more thinking along the lines of Sahil here. I don't think we're going to go to zero with programming jobs. We probably will in the future, and we'll touch on that in a second because I have some thoughts on where this is all going, 10, 15 years from now. But I think over the next 3 to 5 years, I think what's going to happen is teams are going to shrink. People are going to have to use AI to stay competitive. They're still going to have some very high paid programming jobs, but their main task again is going to be to facilitate AI to do a ton of the work. Now we can see that this is already happening. So this is a graph showing from the Indeed hiring website. So Indeed's like a big job post website. We can see that the year over year change here in percent of job postings has gone down dramatically. So at the start of 2022, you can see that it went up, right? It went up about 150%. Ever since then, and this is kind of when ChatGPT started to get released, sort of like the end of 2022. Look at this steep drop off here. We got all the way down to minus 50% and it stayed there year over year. So went down 50%, then it stayed going down 50%. This is every year the jobs are going down 50%. It's come up a little bit here in 2025, but it's still negative. So we're still losing jobs every single year in the software world, right? And I expect this to continue, unfortunately. So this is a trend that's happening already. And this guy on X, Riley Brown, he makes a ton of content on AI coding. Definitely check him out. He's got a great YouTube channel also where he does a ton of tutorials. And in this example that I put here on X, he basically goes to like a 2.5 hour tutorial where he shows you basically how to build a full app from scratch with zero code. So he goes through this entire process step by step. He outlines how he does it, and then he uses Cursor to do this. So he likes Cursor a lot. I like Cursor too, but he also uses Bolt and Lovable and things like that. So pretty cool. Check that out as well. But basically, what I'm going with this is that this is a guy who 4-5 months ago had no coding experience, right? You could say that he still doesn't have any coding experience because he's not writing any code. In a lot of ways, I probably have more experience than him, even though he's building more complex stuff than I could necessarily write myself, right? Because he's using AI to do this. And this is a trend that's going to continue. Do I think that everyone who's getting a CS degree right now or getting, computer science degree to become a programmer should all drop out right now? No. But I also think that you need to start embracing these tools really quickly and you need to start getting really good at using them, right? Staying ahead of the curve, because if you're not ahead of the curve, you're going to fall behind. And if you think you can just outright these people that are using AI, you're going to stay behind. There's no way you can do that. My personal opinion is the only way to stay ahead is going to be to embrace these tools, learn how to use them, learn how to get ahead. So if you want to see me make some tutorials on using these tools, kind of like what Riley's doing here, drop a comment. Let me know what you want to see. Your feedback really helps me understand what kind of content that you guys want to see. So if you want to see me make any type of coding content using AI, please do let me know that. And if you like this kind of video, definitely give it a like. It helps me out a lot with the algorithm. Subscribe to the channel. But before you exit, one last thing I want to give you. This is my last parting thought here on where this is all going. So what I personally think is within 10 to 15 years. So again, this isn't 3 years from now, 5 years from now, but I think in about 10, 15 years, before old men, old women, we're going to get to a point where this kind of coding knowledge, right, hey, I'm opening up, my Visual Studio and I'm writing code, right? I think that might be going away. I think it's going to be sort of a language for academics, right? This is going to be a knowledge for people that just thirst for this kind of stuff, that want to know what's powering the back end of these things, but you don't necessarily need to know this, right? I think it's going to become a lot more centralized. I think very few people, of the millions and millions of people right now that write code from scratch, I think that's going to come down to potentially thousands. And I think that it's going to be much more centralized, and it's going to be like the people that study things like ancient Greek, right? There's no practical use for knowing how to write ancient Greek, right? Or read ancient Greek necessarily. But there's people that are academics that just love this stuff, right? They're obsessed with it. So they want to learn that information. So I think that within 10 to 15 years, we're probably going to get there. That is going to be where we are with coding, right? It's going to become this sort of academic study. It's going to be very centralized. And there really is going to be really no practical use for knowing this. I mean, it's almost sad for me to say that because I have such a passion for this, but it feels like we're getting there. It feels like we're getting there. And it feels like the days of rolling up your sleeves and writing, thousands and thousands of lines of code, I think those days are probably coming to an end here, which again, does make me pretty sad to think about. So I'd love to hear your thoughts. Drop a comment. Let me know what you think. If you're in the programming field, I'd love to hear what you have to say.